2.5% in the US. So will the Fed finally move? Mr. Trump has been telling the Fed to move all this while, and they've not. But will they move? So markets basically have come back to their usual realities, their usual playground, which is the final impact on tariffs, inflation, and what the central banks do next.
Well, that is right. And, that resilience has, as I pointed out, been somewhat startling in the light of everything that we've seen happen around the world. Well, you were talking about the Fed and, you were being polite, Surabhi, that he's been asking the Fed to cut. He's gone much further than that. In fact, the reports do suggest that President Trump could be looking at, looking at potential candidates at this point in time, to replace Powell. So, of course, that battle continues. And even as far as tariffs are concerned, look, we're coming very close now to that 9th July deadline. What happens come the 9th of July? There has been no deal with the EU. There has been no deal with India. Both those deals at this point in time look like they are stuck over sensitive issues in the case of India, agriculture, genetically modified crops, dairy. Those seem to be the ask on the US side, and India unwilling to relent. So what happens on the 9th of July? Do we revert back to the 2nd of April
Nobody's
or not?
listening to Trump. Nobody's listening to Trump.
Everybody's listening to Trump.
Definitely not.
Saying if you don't listen, I'll come at you. He's telling that to even
Jerome Powell is not listening.
He's saying that to the Iranians. He's saying that to the Fed.
Exactly.
I thought only one person is speaking, everybody else is listening.
Nobody's really conceding. That's the takeaway.
Right. And honestly, guys, I think the Indian government is also coming around to the fact that let's not compromise too much on our core interests in agriculture. If there's no deal till the 9th of July, it's fine. Let's live with it.
Is really,
but I'll tell you one point on that thing. Shireen, it's a self-imposed deadline, right? US it's a self. It's not as if. So if they feel that they are making good progress with countries, friendly countries, I mean, it doesn't have to be this side or that side. I mean, live this side and die that side. They can extend it.
Okay.
And that's why the market is rallying, right? It's the proverbial kicking the can down the road. Jab hoga tab hoga. In the meantime, corporate earnings are fine. Inflation is okay. So let the party continue.
Just to add to what...
It's taco. It's
correct.
Taco
exactly.
again.
Correct.
Again.
So, Shireen, just to add to what, Surabhi said in her opening remark about why markets are resilient, I put out a piece last week as well. The fact is, crude is the only factor which was impacting India. If you look at from a trade perspective, the trade to Iran, the trade to Iraq is very, very small. From an India point of view, doesn't add any much of a difference to it. So I guess that's also the reason why at least India market has been resilient and not reacting.
Even global markets.
Market.
Last week we did that piece that if you look at the only channel through which these geopolitical, especially the Middle East effects, is oil. Right? That's the cleanest expression. And through you go back to the 9/11 attacks, you look at everything else, right? Prices spike, but they don't last.
They don't last. Exactly.
Even after Russia invaded Ukraine, prices doubled for 3 months after. But within the next 2 months, they were back below when the invasion started. So they're not durable. You see a spike, but they're not durable. And of course, I mean, if that is the one biggest impact and that is not showing up, why should other markets care?
I just want to make one more point on markets and maybe go back to Shireen and Parikshit on this. Folks, typically, I mean, from a market perspective, things like corporate earnings, what's happening with global flows, local flows, those have been the driving forces. The market till now has not been too perturbed with the way forward on the India-US bilateral trade agreement.
No, but it's not just
I want to know, just to complete this point, Sriram, I want to know from the wisdom of this group that typically you can argue that, in US is not such a huge exporting market, and anyway, we're a domestic-facing economy and all of that. But markets can at times be complacent, and no one in the market is talking about that being a risk. If there is a roadblock or the sticky issues are not resolved, we don't know how it goes out, but I know for a fact that in market narratives, a stalling of the deal or a delay of the deal is not being counted as a risk. I don't know, whoever wants to comment.
For the India market, what you're saying, Surabhi, is absolutely perfect for the India market. I'm saying from a global market point of view as well, I think the one thing that market is not considering is every day it seems like a likely event, which is a stark political instability in the US for Trump. He lost his base partly during this attack. He's trying to recover that with a taco moment, like Shireen said, by pulling back from the war with Iran. And now he is in straight coalition course with none other than Tulsi Gabbard. she's not part. I mean, just a report coming out right now says that she's not part of the congressional briefing committee, and she should be otherwise. And she's been a big supporter of Trump, and now she's fallen off, especially after the Intel report that denied Trump's claim that Iran's nuclear facilities have been obliterated. The Intel report says it isn't. So there are cracks within the Trump administration, and I think market may be underpricing that. I'm not saying it's going to break the back, but it might be underpricing this political instability that's coming up.
Well, you know, on that issue of political instability, one doesn't really know. I mean, let's look at what Trump will like to present as the narrative of how he's got NATO to do what he's wanted NATO to do. I mean, let's talk about that other big event that's taken place where, NATO countries have now committed to defense spending of 5% of GDP. And remember, Trump taking full credit, as he always does, for that as well. But to be fair, I mean, this was one of the things that he has put on the table. So he can claim victory for that. And, we saw this with Musk. We've seen this with Bannon and other sort of right-wing, influential voices expressing their concern about going after Iran and so on and so forth. But, we will have to wait to see how much this impacts or dents Trump politically. So I don't know whether to say that he's lost appeal or he's lost support. It might be a bit premature at this point in time. The ratings so far don't show any significant dent.
It was really bad even before this war.
No, I'll tell you. I think both sides are correct. I mean, I remember speaking with the former Foreign Minister of Singapore, George Yeo, and he said that U.S. It's not the political risk. His point was it's so divided now, the US. I mean, politically, right? It's so stark. I mean, nobody's ready to work with the other
It's one
team.
thing for the Democrats and the Republicans to be divided or polarized. But the division within the Republican Party is the problem because he needs.
But beyond the point, who is there? I mean, is there, it's also that what do we call it,
Shady
Tina,
Wars.
whatever we call it, Marcus, right? I mean, he's the guy. Actually, but political risk is that deep divisions within the US, not. One party is not ready to work with the other, repealing earlier policies, etc. But I think what Shireen said is also absolutely right. I mean, actually, if anything, after this, if you read US press, etc., I mean, the general consensus is, the Democrats don't know what to do. I mean, Trump has got this and that, and he's got lots of victories to show.
That litmus test on how deep is this risk and if it's becoming meaningful in any form, I think will happen soon enough, right? If they can push the big, beautiful bill through and some of the other legislation through, then it's Trump all the way. I mean,
this is fine right now because they have a narrow edge in both houses, which will be tested within 12 months, right? So, or 18 months.
Yeah.
That is why he needs this crack within the Republican Party to not, the chasm to not widen further.
Can I Shireen?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Prashad.
I have, let me just turn this entire thing on its head, if you guys will allow, right? So what are we talking about? We're talking about Trump, risk and politics and strikes and geopolitical instability. I want to make 2 points. One is, what if the strikes in Iran, what was the big fear? That America as a global policeman is retreating. But with these strikes in Iran, it's a point of view. Is it possible we can look at it as a decisive move by US? Well, he's saying that if needed, I'm ready to do what is required to maintain stability.
He's the sheriff in town and the only sheriff in town.
So that is one point. The second point, I've just compiled 5 points, right? 5 instances, which kind of flow in that same direction, which is Trump is, as someone said, Trump is a New Yorker. And New York is all about business at the end of the day, right? I mean, you want to, as I don't know where Jerry Maguire, the famous character, was based. I don't know if it was New York, but show me the money.
Show me the money.
That seems to be his sort of posture all along. So look at what he's doing. Actually, if you think about it, step back and think about it, it's quite unprecedented. After bombing Iran, in his own style, right? What is he saying? He's saying, well, we could hold talks with Iran. He's saying it's a great opportunity for Iran and the leaders there, and they've got the oil, as he put it, right? Is it possible?
This morning he says, I'm not taking the oil.
No, this morning was the hilarious bit. He says, I don't care if there is a deal or not.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
And we're not going to take the oil.
Look at the pattern. Look at the pattern, right? What happens is after every sort of geopolitical event in the Middle East, oil output from that country goes down. That's what we've seen. What if all this Iranian oil comes back into the market? That is one. Now look at Syria, which is even more stark. as Trump met with Syria's his interim president, Ahmed al-Shara, in Saudi Arabia. Why is it important? This gentleman's past includes imprisonment in Iraq for insurgency against US-led invasion, right? He's willing to meet with the guy. He's kind of sort of recognized. And he said, well, we want to give Syria a chance at peace under its new leadership. Look at these recent reports with Pakistan. Asim Munir, the Pakistani army chief, met with Trump, and there are reports which suggest that they are discussing rare earth reserves in Balochistan, right?
Good luck with that.
And there is, of course, a counter to China, etc. as well. Gaza. I mean, I'm not making little of course, the human tragedy there. What Trump is saying, a big real estate site for development and stability, and we will bring peace to Middle East. Netanyahu has said it's the proposal is revolutionary. Now look at, I mean, of course, going back to the first time, North Korea, the only sitting president to meet with, the North Korean dictator, and there were all those summits. The point I'm making is, we say that Trump is transactional and we don't have stability, but all of these kind of point to the fact that he just wants to, okay, you're my enemy, but I want to work with you. You're not a permanent enemy. I want to work with you. And so is it possible that all of these things, right, if it brings about more peace, stability for a while, actually spurs growth and spurs...
You've added one more very
the opposite.
important to why the market is rallying.
I like, yeah, exactly, and I liked how Prashant had framed it, conflicts versus contracts, and I think that is also something that the markets are pricing in, Surabhi, at this point in time. That he'd much rather actually engage and get deals done, whatever those deals may be.
China has political, economic, and every reason to support China to the hilt the way US has supported Israel. Essentially, what this conflict has showed us is
To support Iran, you mean? To
support Iran. So to support China, China has all the reasons to support Iran, just like US has supported Israel. But that didn't come through. The BRICS statement was fairly it didn't even name US or Israel, which essentially pulls into question the integrity, the purpose, and the utility of BRICS as a bloc. Because 2 years ago,
I
Iran.
think that the BRICS bloc anyway, the integrity
faded. I mean, but I
the
think
BRICS bloc anyway is I think that question.
A brick in the wall.
It's another brick in the wall. Nice, Prashant. Good one.
But the Russian position in this is interesting as well, right? Russia categorically said that they're not looking to intervene. I mean, at least on the face of it. they were sort of following a very careful middle path.
Correct, exactly. So Russia has common interests both in Israel and Iran. So Russia's problem is slightly divided. It's like, a lot of other countries which have divided interests. But the final takeaway of this is what? Essentially what it is showing us, this war, is that an ideological alliance is far more utilitarian than a transactional alliance like the one that Iran has with China. And if Trump is taking us towards that world where every relationship is more transactional and less ideological, then these alliances are going to be very fragile. And therefore, the risk of any conflict exploding into a market event or a black swan event in the next 2 to 3 years is more than it is right now.
I remember we did this quick cut.
It's a complete opposite. It's we have a divided house here because Prashant.
I was going to say something. I said time is done. I don't want to launch into. But I think.
No, but I remember last episode when we were missing Shireen, we did this final quick dipstick towards the end. And at that point, the bomb hadn't been dropped. US had not entered. And I remember all of us were saying that there'll be a deal and the US
I
won't
wasn't.
enter. Sriram was right. I give it to you. Full credit back on the show.
Thank you very
That,
But we can do. Let's Prashant. Let's hear you out, right? What
are the conflicts over? Can the markets keep
what do you
marching
think?
on?
What's your
Who
contradiction?
knows? But all I'm saying is, you just look at what is happening. He's working with everybody. Nobody is taboo. Nobody is untouchable.
Correct.
Right? So what does it show us?
I'm saying nobody is untouchable. But to what extent are you going? Because
look, Sriram, my point is he recognizes what is real politics, right? We can't change things. We can't affect all these regime changes and impose democracy on countries, etc. I think that's not Trump's view. It's never been. He just works with you as you are. Now, you may be a bad person, a good person, whatever. The point is, but let's work and let's sort of look ahead. And so in terms of whether that will lead to more productivity, better sort of economic output overall, net positive. I think
Prashant has a
yes.
positive spin to it. It sounds very positive.
it's logical, right? It works as my point is I'm not denying.
There's truth in both. I think
Correct.
there's truth in both that a Trump world, we are going to see more instability because as we've been discussing, there are no permanent friends and there are no permanent enemies. But also equally true that at the end of the day, throw me the money or put the deal on the
No,
table
and think
or
about it. If
whatever.
Syria comes back into the global fold, if Iran comes back into the global fold as a real actor, right? I mean, it's like an isolated country, right? It sells most of its oil in Asia to one country. So it's not really integrated.
I don't think we are in contradiction. What you are saying is that it works till it works. I am saying the moment it stops working, it's a spiral.
Yeah.
So that
is true anyway, na?
No, that's true. But the chances of it going into a spiral is more when these coalitions are not based on cemented on.
So let me
ideology.
simplify it and add a little bit of Hindi. He'll show the danda and then he'll do the deed.
1 second. Yeah, but and just to sort of play devil's advocate and taking off from where Prashant left off, if coalitions were effective and efficient and actually carried weight, then we wouldn't be in this.
We wouldn't be in this position.
Three years
all this rules-based international order. I mean, there was no rules-based international order. He's just shown it to.
The rules-based international order worked for 30 years.
I mean,
this one will not work more than 3 years.
It worked for some, it didn't work for others, right?
Correct.
I mean, let's face it.
What has changed from June 12th to now? My question is that June 12th, June 11th, when Israel attacked Iran, from then to now, what has changed? Nothing. Just that, except for Iran is slightly weaker. We can't agree upon whether it has nuclear capability or not. Israel wants regime change. It will continue to push for it. Netanyahu is not going to give up. Trump doesn't want a war, but the people, he's falling out. He's fallen out with Elon. He's fallen out with other, now with Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
So the point is that the power centers are not weaker. The players are. Yeah. So
that's a good point. That's an interesting take, and that is a good point.
I think Parishit wanted to come in here.
Shireen, just one thing that I have, and I've been speaking to many experts, and this is what Ashley Tellis also said, Shireen. He said, don't take whatever Donald Trump says too seriously or don't take it too hard. This was his advice for India. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Don't take him too seriously. Don't feel too
Absolutely.
bad about what he says. Be very practical. Defend your interests. Be agile in the current global environment.
I mean, you look at his language every day at the White House. He speaks every day, right? What does he say? These are the very bad people, but we're going to work with them. You know, they're very unfair to us. For India, for example, right? When he first started, they're very unfair to us, but they're a great country.
No matter how much he dislikes a journalist or a media house, he gives them interviews. If only to abuse them, he speaks to them. That's all.
I don't know about the Nobel Peace Prize.
I didn't think in this life, at least on live television, we would have had to report on the F-bomb being dropped by a US president. But that has also happened. That has also happened. But I want to end with I think it was this morning that I got a WhatsApp forward, which was really interesting. If you think about it, whether it's the US, where an almost 80-year-old man believes that he's 20 and still raring to go day after day. It's Netanyahu also into his late 70s in Israel doing the same. Look at Iran again. You've got a leader there well into his 70s or perhaps
80s, 85.
80s,
Yeah.
exactly. And these are men
Tagline,
and leaders
Shireen,
who are
may I suggest a tagline?
What is the tagline?
Boomers turn bombers. You
thought this through earlier, na, Sriram? Like on the spot.
Clickbait. Clickbait. The clickbait. He must have checked with SEO.
no, not yet. This, very impromptu.
But that's something to be said about the staying power of these men who are still at it, who are fighting for relevance, fighting for to make an impact, fighting for their voices to be heard, and behaving like they're in their 20s. There's no sort of burnout or fatigue or any of that, which is something that we hear quite constantly from.
No work-life balance.
We can do a boomer versus Gen Z debate on another show, but that's the sum and substance of where we find ourselves. I think the point that we've been trying to make is that while headlines may be screaming catastrophe and disaster, the markets are telling you a different story. Now, for now, the markets seem to have been proven right. Will they continue to be proven right is the big question. But for now, the markets clearly have this round. Prashant, Surbi, Nimesh, Sriram, and Parikshit, many thanks
Shireen,
for joining us.
Notice
Yes.
the
Yeah, we have the new
CNBC access.
New cups.
That's totally unfair. Yeah, we don't even have those mugs. What kind of a transaction is this? Yeah, this is terrible.
We can strike a deal off air. We'll call Parikshit. We'll do a deal.
But I would want to request, before we sign off, Shireen, I would like to request our users to do check out CNBC 18 Access. I mean, if you're watching this, you're probably on it already, but do tell your friends is what I mean. If you enjoyed this episode, and please do in the comments leave like questions for us on topics that you would like us to talk about, so that we can pick up from you and come up with think about stuff. Help us think.
Yes, help us think and help us plan, and we would love to hear from you. So do visit CNBC TV 18 Access, become a member today. From all of us here, thanks very much for watching. Stay tuned to the CNBC TV 18 Editor's Playbook. We'll join you again next week. Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening: the Sensex and the Nifty snap a 4-day winning streak, but mid-caps continue to gain for the 7th day running. Nifty has now gained more than 8% in the first half of 2025, with bank stocks leading the rally. India's trade delegation extends its stay in the United States as negotiations continue. Sources say no consensus yet on agri, dairy, steel, tariffs and GM crops. President Trump remains ambivalent about the 9th July deadline, saying he could either extend it or even cut it short. Torrent Pharma is set to acquire 46% in JB Chemicals from KKR for just under 12,000 crore rupees. Will also launch an open offer, taking the deal size to more than 19,000 crores. The deal will make Torrent the 4th largest pharma company in India. The government is likely to invite financial bids for IDBI Bank soon. Sources say officials are close to concluding the share purchase agreement with potential suitors. It's the last day for IndusInd Bank to send its candidates for CEO position to the RBI. Sources say Axis Bank's Rajiv Anand leads the race. The bank is also likely to recommend Rahul Shukla of HDFC Bank and Anup Saha of Bajaj Finance. The US Senate passes President Trump's spending bill by a slim margin. The latest version of the bill reduces the tax on remittances to 1%, but the bill stuns the clean energy industry with a new tax on wind and solar projects. At least 12 people killed and dozens injured after an explosion at an industrial area in Telangana. The blast took place at a reactor at the Sigachi Chemicals factory, which manufactures microcrystalline cellulose. Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu hosts tech leaders as he aims to build a quantum valley in Amravati. Naidu says IBM, TCS and L&T have formed a consortium focused on quantum computing and artificial intelligence. That's an exclusive. Zomato's co-founder Dipinder Goyal is betting big on the aviation sector. Deep dive into his investment into a startup that promises buses in the sky. That's coming up. Well, let's start with the market action. The Sensex and the Nifty snapping a 4-day winning streak, but mid-caps continue to gain today. The Sensex finally lost about 450 points, and the Nifty was down by about 120 points, 0.5% cut there coming in for both the Sensex and the Nifty. The Nifty bank closing flat, mid-caps up by over 0.5%. But that's the story for today. We're also at the halfway point of 2025, and in the first 6 months, the Nifty has gained more than 8%, led by bank stocks. Hormuz is standing by now to take us through the half-yearly report card for our markets. Hormuz.
More action than in an action film, more drama than in a drama film. Well, I guess the markets have seen it all in the first 6 months of 2025, be it tariffs, be it war, be it ceasefires. And after all of this, the Nifty has trumped up with returns of 8.5% in the first 6 months of the year. And this is after an 18% recovery that the index has seen from the lows that it had made at the start of 2025. The Nifty Bank, which is already trading at record highs, is up 13% so far in the first half of this year. And this tinge of green that you see in the mid-cap and the small-cap index is after a near 30% recovery that these indices have seen from the lows that they made earlier this year. Now, which have been the top performers on the Nifty in the first 6 months? No prices for guessing, but it is BEL and Bajaj Finance. The 6 months, though, belong to the life insurance companies. SBI Life and HDFC Life, both of them are seeing their second best calendar year already in terms of returns, and Bajaj Finserv, of course. And the underperformers, of course, it is the IT names that form the predominant list. TCS, Infosys, Wipro, all of them in there, along with Trent and, of course, IndusInd Bank, despite a near 35% recovery from the lows. You take a look at the mid-cap index, and Solar Industries has been the talk of the town in the last few months. Almost 80% returns in the first 6 months. Bharat Dynamics, BSE, L&T Finance is up 50% so far this year. Now, what is down 50% this year, though, is Ola Electric, continuing to make new lows from its IPO price, along with names like Oracle Financial, Kalyan Jewellers, Premier Energies, too forms a part of this list. Defense has been a common theme across the Nifty, the mid caps, and even the small caps, because Garden Reach is the top gainer on the small cap index, almost 90%. Narayana Health until last week making new highs. Reddington and Naveen Fluorine, after a slew of positive brokerage commentary, is up almost 50% so far this year. And among the underperformers, though, it is names like Brainbees Solutions, Anantraj, Natco Pharma, losses of anywhere between 35 to 40%. So it's been an action-packed first half of 2025. Well, the bulls would definitely be hoping that the second half is less action-packed, but it has enough legs to take the Nifty past its record high levels.
All right, Hormuz, many thanks. That's the Nifty report card for you. It's 6 months of the year already. Now, in less than 10 days, the 26% reciprocal tariff announced by U.S. President Trump on India is scheduled to kick in. Hectic negotiations are underway in Washington as both sides aim to iron out their differences. When asked if the July 9 deadline could be extended, President Trump remained ambivalent, saying he could defer the deadline or even shorten it. Take a look.
Is that July 9th date a set for tariffs to snap
No.
back, or could there be a?
We can do whatever we want. We could extend it. We could make it shorter. I'd like to make it shorter. I'd like to just send letters out to everybody. Congratulations, you're paying 25%.
We can do whatever we want. That is the inimitable President Trump there. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, meanwhile, has said that India would love to have a big, good, and beautiful trade agreement with the U.S., but not without riders. Speaking to the Financial Express, the Finance Minister highlighted that dairy and agriculture are red lines that India has drawn in the talks with the U.S. The minister was reacting to President Trump's remarks the deal could soon open up the Indian market. The Indian delegation has extended its stay in Washington for negotiations by 3 days. That is till today. Abhimanyu joins us now with more. Abhimanyu, so the trade negotiations continue today as well. Take us through where things stand.
Uncertainties over the economic fallout of reciprocal tariffs still remains, as India and the US are still engaged in discussions for an interim deal and a bilateral trade agreement. India's trade delegation has extended its stay in the United States by a day, which has raised hopes for a potential interim trade deal with the United States. Last week, US President Donald Trump had indicated that a very big deal with India was likely very soon. He had also indicated that he would write letters to several countries the US is already negotiating trade deals with, and in case the deals are not negotiated before a certain point of time, those letters itself are going to substitute for trade deals. Now, it remains to be seen how early these negotiations are going to end and whether an interim deal would be signed between India and the United States. Now, concerns remain over several issues pertaining to dairy and agricultural products, in which the US has sought lower duties. It has also sought higher access, more access for GM crops, something which is being resisted by India due to domestic concerns. It remains to be seen whether there is going to be an interim deal signed anytime soon, even as Indian negotiators till now have made it clear, as per government sources, that any deal which would be signed should be a win-win situation and should not be signed out of desperation.
All right, Abhimanyu, many thanks for joining us. So the clock ticking there as far as the deadline for the tariffs to kick in 9th July is what the date is. But as we heard from President Trump, could extend it, could even shorten the date. Now, the big corporate story, Torrent Pharma is set to acquire JB Chemicals in a deal worth more than 19,000 crore rupees. The deal will make Torrent the fourth largest player in the pharma industry. Ekta is standing by to take us through the contours of the deal and the significance. Ekta, big one in the pharma space.
Well, yes, Torrent Pharma has announced a two-phase acquisition of JB Chemicals from KKR, marking one of the largest deals in India's branded pharma space since possibly the Ranbaxy-Sun merger. Torrent will first acquire 46.39% stake for around 11,917 crores and may pick up an additional 2.8% from JB Chemical employees at around 1,600 rupees per share. An open offer for 26% follows at around 1,639 rupees per share, with the total size of the acquisition for Torrent possibly going up to as much as 19,480 odd crores. Now, in the second phase, the companies will merge, with JB shareholders receiving 51 Torrent shares for every 100 held. Now, the deal values JB Chemicals at around 25,689 crores, an 11% discount to its closing price ahead of the deal. With the JB Chemicals acquisition, Torrent Pharma is now poised to rise from the 6th to the 4th largest pharma company in India. The deal, in fact, is expected to boost its domestic revenues by 35%, surpassing 8,600 crores based on FY25 numbers. Torrent will strengthen its dominance in cardiac and gastro segments, gaining top brands like cardiac drug Silicar with sales of 785 crores and gastro drug Metrogel at around 342 crores in terms of the size of a drug. It also secures entry into ophthalmology and expands its footprint in the global CDMO space. Torrent Pharma may in fact fund the JB Chemicals acquisition through a mix of internal accruals, debt, and equity via QIP. It could take on as much as 10,000 to 12,500 crores of debt, pushing the combined net debt to around 14,500 crores and a net debt to EBITDA to around 3 times on an FY25 basis, according to analysts. However, analysts, including DAM Capital, are not overly concerned. They point to Torrent's steady free cash flows and believe a 2 times EV to EBITDA leverage is reasonable and the debt could be paid down in 3 to 4 years. Now, while JB Chemicals currently operates at a lower EBITDA margin than Torrent Pharma, analysts are not overly concerned about that either. Torrent has had a strong track record of cost rationalization as seen in its past acquisitions of Elder, Unichem and Curatio, which saw margin expansions within 1 to 2 years. While we could see near-term dilution, analysts believe the combined entity could target EBITDA margins of 34 to 35% over the next 3 to 4 years. Lastly, what are the brokerages saying? IIFL recommends JB shareholders should avoid tendering in the open offer and wait to swap their shares in the merger. Nomura expects the adjusted EPS accretion in the mid-single to low double digits. They maintain a neutral rating with a target price of 3580. HSBC expects the deal to be 3% accretive to FY27 estimated EPS estimates. They retain a buy with a target price of 3,775.
All right, Ekta, that's the big pharma deal, Torrent Pharma to acquire JB Chemicals. At least 12 people dead, dozens injured after an explosion at an industrial area in Telangana. The blast took place at Sigachi's pharma factory in the state's Sangareddy district. The company manufactures microcrystalline cellulose, and the blast is likely to have occurred at a reactor. Officials are yet to confirm what triggered the explosion. Both state and central government have announced monetary compensation for the deceased. Coal mines across India have been asked by the government to explore ways to extract rare earth minerals. The move comes amidst export restrictions imposed by China on rare earth magnets. Now, these magnets are critical for making electric vehicles. Government sources say coal mines will explore if rare earth minerals can be extracted either from byproducts or waste materials. India is widening its semiconductor ambitions beyond fabs. That's fabrication units. Sources tell CNBC TV 18 that the government has called for expressions of interest for 2D material facilities and research and development. The government is also open to funding depending on the readiness of the industry. Currently, chips are fabricated using silicon wafers. 2D materials are significantly thinner. No country or company is producing this commercially yet. Research is underway in countries like China, US, Japan, UK, and Germany. Payment and identity cards maker Moneypal Cards is looking to debut on Dalal Street. The company has filed a confidential draft red herring prospectus to raise 1,200 crore rupees. According to Money Control, the IPO is likely to comprise a mix of primary and secondary share sales. Currently, promoters led by Gotham Pai family hold a majority stake of 60%. Krispy Kreme's India operator Cure Foods has filed draft papers with market regulator SEBI for its initial public offer. The offer comprises a fresh issue of shares worth 800 crores as well as an offer for sale, which will see Iron Pillar, PCC, Crimson Winter, and CureFit Healthcare make partial exits. The company could hit the market between November and December this year. The proceeds will be used for expansion and equipment. On to CNBC TV 18 exclusive. The government is set to invite financial bids for IDBI Bank. Sources say officials are close to concluding a share purchase agreement with potential suitors. Shares of IDBI Bank surging in today's trade on the back of that development. The stake sale at the bank has been in several delays over the last 3 years. Sapna is here with more. Sapna, it has been in the making for a long time. Are we anywhere closer to a deal being done at IDBI Bank?
So this is going to be a completion of a long journey. If you can recall, way back in October 2022 was the first instance when the preliminary bids for IDBI Bank disinvestment had been called. And we are now in 2025. So what we're clearly given to understand is that probably the government is close to, agreeing or rather finalizing the share purchase agreement with potential bidders for IDBI Bank stake sale. And once that important milestone has been crossed, the next stage, of course, would be calling for the financial bids. And we are given to understand that there may not be too much of a gap between both the exercises. Of course, approval from the ministerial panel, which is headed by the finance minister herself, that will be sought. The finance minister herself has already indicated that, the government expects to close the IDBI deal in FY26.
So my sense is that before H1 ends, I think the government will be in a position to call for financial bids, if not sooner than that.
Well, not holding my breath, but looks like there is some forward movement on IDBI Bank. It's been many years in the making. Thanks very much, Sapna. Staying with the banking space, it is the last day for IndusInd Bank to send names for the CEO position to the RBI. We learned from sources that Axis Bank's Rajiv Anand leads the race. The bank is also likely to recommend the names of Rahul Shukla from HDFC Bank and Anuj Saha of Bajaj Finance. The Bombay High Court has deferred hearing a petition filed by the CEO of HDFC Bank, Shashidhar Jagdishan, against the Leelavati Trust. The bank's CEO is seeking the quashing of an FIR filed against him by the Leelavati Trust alleging cheating and fraud. HDFC Bank has denied all allegations. The court will hear the case on the 14th of July. Now, 6 suitors submitted bids for Jayaprakash Associates under the bankruptcy process, but only 5 have qualified. We learned from sources that Adani Enterprises, Dalmia Bharat, Vedanta and Jindal Power are among the bidders for JP Group's flagship firm. Sources say that JP Infratech's bid was disqualified because it did not submit the deposit amount. As per banks, the government's bad bank 12,000 crore rupee offer to acquire JP Associates may have been used as a benchmark by bidders. DLF is all set for its Mumbai debut. The real estate developer secured Maharashtra Real Estate Regulatory Authority or RERA's approval for its residential project in Andheri. The first phase of the project includes over 400 apartments across 4 towers. The launch is likely in the next 2 weeks. Sources tell us the company expects sales of around 2,500 crore rupees with that launch. Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu hosted tech leaders from around the world as he aims to build a quantum valley in Amravati. The aim is to attract top tech companies to focus on quantum computing and artificial intelligence. Shilpa spoke with the Chief Minister, who said IBM, TCS and L&T have formed a consortium to invest in Amravati, and Microsoft is set to follow suit.
It is one more leapfrog development in information technology.
Right.
I started iTech City to promote information technology exactly 3 decades back.
Right.
Today, Quantum Valley for quantum computing and also artificial intelligence, AI. This is the order of the day. I want to create an ecosystem for quantum computing.
Right.
Then that will be the future. I'm giving land. Government also will be a partner to this ecosystem we wanted to take to the logical. These 50 acres of land. Land is not the constraint. Today here, TCS and also IBM and also L&T. They are all consortium. They are working together. Now Microsoft also is coming back. Today we had a discussion. They want to start quantum computing here. We are developing Amravati. So Visakhapatnam also and Tirupati. These are all the areas where we are having excellent advantages. Ultimately, if you give land also, people won't come. The confidence of the government and also credibility of the government is important. That we are establishing. That's why TCS has come, Cognizant has come, Google has come, RCR Mittal has come. All these industries, they started now.
Chandrababu Naidu there on their quantum computing valley that is being thought about for Amravati. Time for us to head to a short break, but up next, Zomato's co-founder Dipinder Goyal is betting big on the aviation sector. A deep dive into what his startup that promises buses in the sky is all about when we return. In a big win for the United States, Canada has cancelled its digital services tax that targeted American tech companies. Now, the move came just hours before the tax was set to come in. Following this move, Prime Minister Mark Carney and President Trump agreed to resume trade negotiations and reach a deal by the 21st of July. The implementation of the DST would have meant that digital services companies with a revenue of over $20 million in a year in Canada would have had to pay a 3% tax. The payments would have applied retrospectively to 2022, and Donald Trump had basically said that they would have no talks with Canada on a trade deal if this tax were to come through. Canada scrapping the tax, and now trade negotiations have resumed. The U.S. Senate has passed President Trump's spending bill by a slim margin. The latest version of the bill reduces the tax on remittances to 1% in a major relief for the NRI community. An earlier version of the bill had proposed to tax remittances at 3.5%. The new version, though, has stunned the clean energy industry with a new tax on wind and solar projects. Sonal is standing by with the details. Sonal, tough times for the solar and wind energy industry in the U.S. with this bill going, perhaps clearing the way.
Well, there's a new Senate bill and it has come as a surprise to the clean energy segment. The updated Senate bill has slashed wind and solar incentives. It has also added a new tax to the clean energy space. So now remember, the initial version of the bill, it required projects to start construction by the end of 2025 to get the full benefit of the incentives. However, the fresh version suggests otherwise. It says the wind and solar projects, they need actually to be up and running by the end of 2027 itself to get all the incentives, and this has come as a setback for the entire industry in the US. The legislation has also added new tax on wind and solar projects, and this is for projects which do not meet the criteria when it comes to using Chinese equipments for their projects. So this is also something which is new and that has been added to the bill. It has added that the production of coal used in steel making will also come into the credit basket. The other thing is that the bill has included quicker end to a popular $7,500 consumer tax credit for electric vehicles. They plan to end it earlier than what was expected. So earlier they expected to end it by the end of this year, but now they say it could end as early as September 2025 as well. And the entire electric vehicle industry has not taken it positively, and it has taken up a lot of criticism.
Sonal, many thanks for joining us. Now, Zomato's co-founder Dipinder Goyal is betting big on the aviation sector. Goyal has backed a new aviation startup, LAT Aerospace, that's aiming to transform regional aviation with what it calls buses in the sky. Madhiya is here to explain more to us about this new venture and the plans that it has to turn this into reality. Madhiya, buses in the sky?
Yes, buses in the skies. Well, we have talked about air taxis, the electric vertical takeoff and landing machines, a helicopter-like model that aims to beat urban traffic and help people with daily commute. We have some Indian startups who are developing air taxis, but those are still in the works. Some have their prototypes ready and are conducting tests. The government is yet to finalize the rules for air taxis. But LAT Aerospace, in which Dipinder Goyal has invested, has a different pitch. The startup is talking about buses in the sky, as you mentioned, that will connect smaller cities where people mostly depend on road and trains to commute, which consumes several hours or sometimes days. Now, India already has a regional connectivity scheme where airlines use smaller jets up to 80-seater to connect Indian cities, like Indigo, SpiceJet and Alliance Air operate regional flights. Then Star Air, Fly 91 are some regional players. Then we also have helicopters that can carry up to 6 people from one city to another. But LAT Aerospace is building a system designed from scratch. In a social media post, a LAT Aerospace co-founder Surbhi Das has talked about building a 12 to 24-seater hybrid short takeoff and landing aircraft that will operate from air stops. Now that sounds like bus stops, which will be no bigger than a parking lot. Built closer to where people actually live, which means residential areas. It will have no security lines or baggage belts, and people will just walk in and fly. That's the vision LAT Aerospace has. Sources tell CNBC TV18 the company has raised $50 million, of which $20 million are from Dipinder Goyal. They are inviting aerospace engineers and designers to join their ambitious project. In fact, Dipinder Goyal, in a post, has promised to match or exceed on-campus offers to attract engineering graduates. He also offered ESOPs to those joining the project as the founding team. Now, the idea looks to be in concept stage, and the company will have to first build a design, a prototype, get government approval. It will have to plan on how and where to build these proposed air stops from where sky buses will operate. A key question is how it will use the existing airstrips, and will the government come up with new rules for this kind of model? It's a promising project that could revolutionize air travel, but building it from scratch means it will take longer to take shape.
Yes, it is certainly not going to happen overnight, but as Madhu was pointing out, this is a space that is broken, but it's also a space that has seen many invest and many dreams not take off. Will this one see the light of day, and what kind of rules and regulations will be put in place for this to be able to become a reality is the big question. But many thanks for joining us. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. The news will continue. Stay with us. We're watching CNBC TV 18. We're back in a moment.
자, 2025년 6월 30일 미국 개장 전 특징주 및 이슈 시작해 보도록 하겠습니다. 일단 캐나다가 미국과의 무역 협상을 재개하기 위해서 디지털 서비스세를 철회를 했습니다. 캐나다의 총리가 이 디지털 서비스세 철회를 발표를 하게 되면서 7월 21일까지 무역 협상을 통한 포괄적인 합의에 도달할 수 있을 것이다 라고 발언을 했습니다. 자, 엔비디아 최근에 주가가 올라가고는 있습니다만 차익 실현 물량이 좀 나온 것 같아요. 그래서 내부자들이 지난 1년간 10억 달러 상당의 주식을 매각을 했고요. 최근 3월에 발표한 매도 계획에 따라서 황 CEO가 최대 600만 주의 매도 일환으로 최근에 약 1,500만 달러의 주식을 처분을 했습니다. 그런데도 불구하고 주가는 지속적으로 상승을 하고 있는 모습을 보여주고 있고요. 그 다음에 나이키는 실적 발표를 했죠. 그러면서 실적이 굉장히 좀 잘 나왔는데 증권사마다 투자 의견이 좀 바뀌었습니다. 대부분 상향 조정을 했습니다. 실적은 되게 좋은데 지금 관세 리스크라든가 디지털 채널 부진 등의 악재로 인해서 2026년 1분기 그 다음에 2026년 전체에 대해서 보수적인 가이던스를 제시를 했는데 트루이스트는 투자 의견을 매수로 유지를 했고요. 목표 유가를 73달러에서 85달러로 상향 조정을 했습니다. 파이퍼 샌들러 역시 투자 의견 비중 확대 유지, 목표 주가 70달러에서 80달러로 상향 조정을 했고요. 뱅크 오브 아메리카 투자 의견 매수 유지, 목표 주가 80달러에서 84달러로 상향. JP모건 투자 의견 중립 유지, 목표 주가를 56달러에서 64달러로 상향 조정을 했고요. UBS는 투자 의견을 중립으로 유지를 했고요. 목표 주가는 56달러에서 63달러로 상향을 했습니다. 바클레이즈도 역시 투자 의견을 시장 비중으로 유지를 했고요. 목표 주가 53달러에서 64달러로 상향 조정을 했습니다. 실적이 좋아진다라고 얘기는 하고는 있는데 주가 한번 확인을 좀 해볼게요. 지난 목요일 날 금요일이죠. 금요일 날 급등을 한 후에 주가가 지금 소폭 약세가 이어지고 있는 모습인데, 제 기준으로 말씀을 해드리자면 지금 71달러 있죠. 71달러를 이탈하지 않으면 뭐 추가적으로 상승할 가능성이 있다라고 보고 있고요. 80달러까지는 상승 여력이 있다라고 생각을 하고 있습니다. 투자 의견에서 목표 주가를 상향 조정을 했음에도 불구하고 64달러로 상향 조정을 했다라는 건 지금부터 눌릴 가능성이 있다라고 보고는 있는데, 그냥 제 입장에서는 71달러 유지 시 80달러까지는 상승 여력이 있다라고 계속 생각을 하고 있고요. 트레이드 데스크 얘기가 좀 나왔네요. 에버코어가 트레이드 데스크에 대해서 수요 여건과 광고 제품들의 성과가 긍정적이다라고 평가를 하게 되면서 투자 의견을 인라인에서 아웃퍼폼으로 상향 조정을 했고, 목표 주가를 90달러로 상향 조정을 했습니다. 유지를 했네요. 이거는 실적까지 체크를 좀 해봐야겠죠. 그래서 실적 확인을 해 보시게 되면 제가 생각하는 건 최근에 보지는 못했습니다. 저도 거의 뭐 잠자는데 시간을 많이 썼다 보니까. 그런데 연간 실적이나 분기 실적이 긍정적으로 이어질 가능성이 높다라고 생각을 해보시면 트레이드 데스크는 주가 추가적인 상승이 이어질 가능성이 높다라고 보고 있고요. 다만 4분기에 182달러까지 주가가 올라간 후에 1분기 실적이 안 좋았죠. 제 예상에도 90달러 초반까지는 상승 여력이 있다라고 생각을 하시면 될 것 같고요. 그러면 이 종목은 관심 종목으로 표시를 좀 해 두셔도 괜찮을 것 같습니다. 에어로바이러먼트 AVAV 최근 실적 괜찮았죠. 그러면서 주가가 지속적으로 상승을 하고 있는 모습인데, 이런 종목은 저는 보지는 않죠. BTIG에서 에어로바이러먼트의 수주 상황을 분석한 결과 견고한 수주가 지속되고 있다라고 하면서 투자 의견을 매수로 유지, 목표 주가를 225달러에서 300달러로 상향 조정을 했는데, 수주 잔고가 전분기 대비 32% 감소를 했대요. 아직 확보되지 않은 수주가 절반으로 감소를 했는데, 이러한 수주 감소가 미국의 스위치 블레이드 구매 계약 통합 과정에서 발생한 일시적인 현상이다라고 확인이 되었습니다. 따라서 에어바이러먼트의 수주 전망이 제기된 불확실성을 해소하고 있다라고 얘기를 하는데, 이거 뭔 얘기인지 모르겠어요. 근데 제 관점에서는 아니다라는 거 말씀을 좀 해드리도록 하겠습니다. 자, 그 다음에 뱅크 오브 아메리카에서는 하반기 상승이 기대되는 종목으로 로쿠와 힌지헬스에 대해서 얘기를 좀 했는데, 실적을 확인을 해봐야 될 것 같아요. 주가는 뭐 박스권에서 지금 횡보를 하고 있는 모습을 보여주고 있고요. 로크의 실적을 보게 되면 뭐 올해까지는 적자가 유지될 가능성이 있고요. 3분기부터 실적 턴 어라운드 가능성이 있다라는 걸 생각을 해보시면 될 것 같습니다. 그럼 23달러면 지금 4분기 실적이 긍정적으로 될 가능성이 있죠. 아마 16달러 정도 플러스 될 가능성이 있기 때문에 하반기 실적 기대감으로 이거는 체크를 좀 해보도록 하겠습니다. 3분기, 4분기 실적이 좋아지죠. 4분기, 3Q, 4Q 이렇게 체크를 해놓으면 되겠죠. 트레이드 데스크도 체크를 좀 해보도록 하겠습니다. EQ 좋아지죠. EQ 2분기, 그 다음에 3분기 좋아지고요. 아직 4분기까지는 나오진 않았기 때문에 이렇게만 좀 체크를 해보도록 하겠습니다. 자, 그 다음에 힌지헬스도 확인을 해보게 되면 주가 높네요. 실적이 얼마나 좋아질지는 모르겠지만 일단은 조정을 받으면 매수 타이밍이 나온다라고 생각을 하셔야 될 것 같고, 연간 실적은 나오지는 않고요. 2분기부터 실적은 적자가 유지가 될 가능성이 높다라고 생각을 하시면 될 것 같습니다. 자, 우버 테크놀로지 최근에 테슬라 쪽에 지금 로보택시가 100대 이상 돌아다니죠. 그러다 보니까 뭐 우버 테크놀로지나 리프트에 대한 기대감이 형성이 되고 있는 것으로 보이고 있습니다. 다만 주가는 높아요. 높기 때문에 이 종목은 패스를 좀 해보도록 하겠고요. 일단은 캐너 코드가 우버가 인간과 로봇 운전자가 공존하는 하이브리드 시스템에서 가치를 더할 수 있는 가능성은 있겠지만 완전 자율주행 대기업이 시장을 장악할 경우 우버와 리프트는 과거의 영광을 되돌아보는 상황에 놓일 수 있다라고 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 그러면서 목표 주가를 90달러에서 84달러로 하향 조정을 했고요. 매수에서 보유로 낮췄습니다. 켄터피츠데럴드는 여전히 다수의 성장 능력을 보유하고 있다면서 테슬라 등 경쟁사의 자율주행 확대가 실제로 시장을 뒤흔드는 데는 수년이 걸릴 것이다라고 보게 되면서 목표 주가를 96달러에서 106달러로 상향 조정을 했고요. 투자 의견을 비중 확대로 유지를 했습니다. 스냅 광고 성장세에 대한 얘기를 긍정적으로 평가를 하고 있는데 매크로 악재가 성장을 제한할 것이다라고 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 이건 넘어가도 될 것 같아요. 자, 그다음에 매코믹은 뭐 일부 제품의 가격을 4분기에 인상할 것이다라고 얘기를 하고 있는데 이게 이제 뭐 9월부터 11월까지죠. 참고해 주시면 좋을 것 같고요. 매코믹 그러면 실적이 좋아진다라는 얘기겠죠. 좋네요. 차트는 지금 마음에 들어요. 차트는 마음에 들고 실적을 확인해 보게 되면 소폭 늘어나는 모습 보여주고 3, 4분기 실적 괜찮네요. 3, 4분기 실적 괜찮고 내년 실적도 늘어날 가능성이 있습니다. 그러면 주가는 지금 2022년부터 시작을 해서 꾸준하게 우상향이 돼야 된다라고 생각을 하고 있고요. 그러면 역사적 고점까지 105달러까지는 상승 여력이 있다라고 생각을 하고 있습니다. 3분기, 4분기 실적이 좋아지죠. 4분기 실적 좋아지기 때문에 요거는 색깔을 빨간색으로. 그다음에 로빈훗 컴퍼니 포인트가 주가 상승 촉매들이 앞으로 더 나타날 것이다라고 하면서 투자 의견을 매수로 유지를 했고요. 목표 주가를 96달러로 상향 조정을 했는데 후드도 스테이블 코인부터 시작을 해서 뭐 비트코인, 주식 이런 이슈가 있기 때문에 주가 많이 올라갔네요. 그 다음에 타이슨 푸드 투자 의견을 골드만삭스에서 매수로 유지를 했고요. 목표 주가를 64달러로 제시를 좀 했는데 64달러는 아닐 수가 있을 것 같아요. 64달러 부분까지 오겠네요. 63달러까지는 상승 여력이 있다라고 생각을 하시면 될 것 같고요. 실적을 확인을 해보도록 하겠습니다. 올해 실적 긍정적이다라고 보고 있고, 와, 2분기 엄청 좋아지네요. 2분기에 엄청 좋아집니다. 2분기, 3분기 좋아지네요. 이런 종목은 담으셔야죠. 이거는 되게 좋아지네요. 보셨다시피 순이익이 1분기에 7달러에서 305달러까지 급격하게 상승을 하고 있는데 주가는 바닥에서 횡보를 하고 있는 모습을 보여주고 있습니다. 그렇기 때문에 이 종목은 저는 63달러까지는 상승 여력이 있다라고 생각을 해서요. 괜찮다라고 보고 있다라는 거 참고를 해주시면 좋을 것 같고요. 코인베이스 글로벌 같은 경우는 캐시우드가 아크 이노베이션 펀드에서 매각을 하고 있다라고 얘기를 하게 되면서 뭐 조정을 받았다라고 얘기를 하는데 주가 굉장히 좀 높고요. 맥도날드는 UBS에서 투자 의견을 매수로 상향 조정을 했고 목표 주가를 350달러로 제시를 했는데 이거는 그냥 차트상으로 보게 되면 조금 더 떨어졌으면 좋겠네요. 275달러 부분까지 떨어지게 되면 매수 관점으로 보셔도 될 것 같고요. 중간중간에 이렇게 떨어진 거 있잖아요. 이거는 일시적인 조정이다라고 생각을 하시면 될 것 같습니다. $350 가능하기는 할 것 같아요. 이게 추세대 채널로 움직이는 거거든요. 채널로 움직이다 보니까 조정을 받고 일단 올라갈 때 뭐 일단은 310, 20, 30, 40, $335까지는 상승 여력이 있다라고 보고는 있습니다만 앞서 언급을 해드렸던 대로 $275까지 조정을 받은 다음에 매수가 좋지 않을까 이렇게 생각을 하고 있습니다. 이 점 참고를 해주시면 좋을 것 같고요. 실적도 좋아지네요. 실적도 좋아집니다. 원래 이게 맞는 거죠. 타이슨 푸드가 너무 주가가 저평가다라고 생각을 하고 있습니다. 자, 그 다음에 셰니어 에너지 제퍼리스에서 목표 주가를 $288까지 상향 조정을 했다라고 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 뭐 주가 높은 건 그냥 제가 블로그에 올려놓도록 할 테니 그 종목 그냥 참조를 해주시면 좋을 것 같아요. 저희가 이 특징주를 분석을 하는 이유가 결국은 실적이 좋아지는데 아직 못 올라간 종목들을 선정을 하려고 하는 거잖아요. 그러다 보니까 그냥 뭐 개인적으로는 바닥에 있는 종목들 위주로만 체크를 좀 해보시는 게 좋지 않을까 이렇게 보고 있고요. 토르 인더스트리 같은 경우는 창립자가 주식 매수를 했다라고 얘기를 하는데 올해 실적 좋지는 않네요. 그 다음에 지역은행 관련주가 좋다라는 얘기 때문에 베어드는 뱅크 오브 아메리카와 JP모건 체이스의 투자 의견을 하향 조정했다라고 얘기를 하고 있고요. 마이크로소프트의 경우는 이슈가 두 개가 있는데 지금 목표 주가 상향 조정하는 경우가 더 많다라고 생각을 하시면 될 것 같습니다. 오픈 AI가 2030년까지로 제가 계약되어 있는 걸로 알고 있거든요. 그렇다라고 한다면 그 성장을 지금 할 때 수익을 나눠 갖는 구조인 거고 뭐 인공지능에 대한 기술이 이슈가 될 가능성이 있기 때문에 마이크로소프트 상승을 더 할 수 있다. 다만 제 관점에서는 아니다라는 말씀 드리도록 하겠습니다. 자, 그 다음에 서비스나우 2분기 실적이 상향될 가능성이 높다라고 얘기를 하고 있는데 그만큼 주가가 올라갔기 때문에 패스하도록 하겠고 비자랑 마스터카드는 영국에서 졌어요. 항소를 하겠다라고 얘기를 하고는 있습니다. 제가 예전에 블로그를 하나 작성을 하고 리포트를 하나 작성을 했던 게 코그닉스였는데 주가 그 리포트를 쓴 다음에 주가가 박살이 났더라고요. 실적은 턴어라운드는 됩니다. 실적은 턴어라운드는 되는데 사상 최대의 실적은 아니었고요. 뭐 예상보다는 조금 더 늘어나는 모습은 보여주고 있는데 이렇게 되면 2024년, 2022년을 뚫지는 못하죠. 그런데 기대감 때문에 요거는 지금 뚫었다라고 보고 있는 거고 지금 이 실적을 뛰어넘지는 못할 것으로 예상을 하고 있기 때문에 제가 예상하는 폭은 $43. 앞으로 한 30% 정도는 상승 여력은 있다라고 보고는 있습니다. 넘어갈게요. 태양광이 오늘 혼조세가 좀 이어지는 모습이었는데 지금 요거는 봐야겠죠. 두 개를 같이 얘기를 해볼게요. 미국 상원에서 논의되고 있는 감세안에서 청정에너지 관련 항목이 다시 조정이 되었는데 이번에는 청정에너지 기업들의 중국산 부품 사용을 억제하려는 조항이 주목을 받고 있습니다. 2027년 이후 서비스를 시작하는 태양광 풍력 발전 프로젝트는 제품에서 중국산 부품이 일정 비율 이상 사용될 경우 인센티브를 받지 못하고요. 세제 혜택 자격 여건은 2027년에 프로젝트를 시작하는 것이 아니라 실제 전력 공급이 이루어져야 충족이 된다라고 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 따라서 전력망 통합에 시간이 걸릴 경우 인센티브를 받지 못하는 우려가 될 수가 있다라고 얘기를 하고 있는데 오히려 퍼스트솔라나 GE 버너바 같은 경우는 유리하게 작용을 할 수 있겠다라고 얘기를 하고 있고요. 그 다음에 밑에 보시게 되면 수소 연료 전지에 대한 얘기가 나오고 있는데 청정에너지에 대한 세제 혜택 폐지가 주목을 받고 있는데 청정에너지 중에서 수소연료 관련 사업은 오히려 수혜가 예상이 된다라고 하고 있습니다. 이번 공개된 안에서는 수소연료 산업에 대한 세제 혜택이 2028년 1월 1일까지 제공되면서 기존안보다 2년 연장이 되었다라고 얘기를 하고 있어요. 그래서 블룸 에너지나 플러그 파워가 주가가 오늘 12%대 상승을 보여주고 있다는 거 참고를 해주시면 좋을 것 같고요. 테슬라는 지금 캐나다에서 적자를 기록을 하고 있다라고 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 그래서 트럼프 행정부의 외교 정책과 머스크 CEO 활동에 대한 반발 심리로 인해서 아마 2026년 1분기에 캐나다 사업이 적자를 기록을 할 것이다라는 얘기가 나오게 되면서 테슬라가 약세가 이어지고 있죠. 거기에다가 머스크랑 테슬라랑 싸우는 게 마무리가 됐을 줄 알았는데 다시 재개가 됐죠. 당연히 주가는 안 좋을 수밖에 없다라는 거 참고를 해주시면 좋을 것 같고요. 크록스는 차트랑 실적을 좀 봐야 될 것 같아요. 저평가다라고 얘기가 좀 나오고 있거든요. 그래서 확인을 좀 해보시게 되면 $103? 실적 확인해 보시게 되면 실적 떨어지네요. 뭐 2분기 실적이 반짝 좋아지는 모습 보여주고는 있는데 그래도 주가가 실적이 긍정적으로 나오면 $115에서 끝이다라고 봐요. 뭐 그냥 이 정도로 저는 체크를 좀 하고 있다라는 거 참고해 주시면 좋을 것 같고요. 서클은 시장에서 얘기를 하는 게 번스타인과 JP모건 체인스가 다른 얘기를 좀 하고 있습니다. 번스타인은 뭐 네가 아무리 이런저런 거 다 포함을 하더라도 높다라고 얘기를 하고 있고요. 높다라고 얘기를 하더라도 스테이블 코인에 대한 기대감이 있기 때문에 더 올라갈 것이다라고 얘기를 하고 있는 반면에 JP모건 체인스는 너 너무 높아 이 얘기하고 있는 거죠. 그 다음에 디즈니에 대한 얘기가 나오고 있는데 디즈니 요즘에 많이 올라갔는지 궁금하네요. 그냥 요즘에는 차트를 안 보고 정리만 좀 하다 보니까 어떻게 움직였는지 요즘에 기억이 없어요. 그래서 확인을 해보게 되면 뭐 3분기까지 실적 좋아진다라고 하는데 연간 실적은 좋아지는데 2, 3분기 실적이 좋아지진 않는 모습입니다. 그 주가는 뭐 많이 올라왔네요. 제 예상은 뭐 차트대로 혹은 향후 실적이 반영이 되면 더 올라갈 수는 있다라고 보고는 있습니다. 근데 박스권을 돌파를 해야 되고요. 박스권을 돌파를 하는 가격은 $126 이렇게 보시면 될 것 같습니다. 자, 그 다음에 모더나 mRNA 독감 백신 후기 임상 3상에서 시판 중인 기존 백신보다 더 강한 면역 반응을 보였다라고 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 실적은 안 나오겠죠? 실적은 안 나오거나 적자일 가능성이 높다라고 보고 있는데 역시 적자네요. 그냥 기대감만으로 매매를 한다라고 하면 $28.6를 돌파를 했을 때 박스권 돌파를 하는 거기 때문에 뭐 그때는 매수 관점으로 생각을 좀 하시면 될 것 같습니다. 확 땡기지는 않네요. 휴렛패커드, 주니퍼 네트워크스와 인수 절차의 핵심적 규제 승인 절차를 마무리했다라고 얘기를 하게 되면서 오늘 11%대 상승을 하고 있는 모습인데 와 이거 박살났을 때 $12에서 매수를 했으면 잭팟이었네요. 근데 지금은 접근하기는 쉽지 않다라는 걸 말씀을 해드리도록 하겠습니다. 자, 그 외에 뉴스가 또 나온 게 있는지 확인을 좀 해보게 되면 메타 플랫폼스 얘기가 좀 있는데 인공지능 엔지니어들을 영입하고 있다라고 얘기가 나오고 있고요. 그 다음에 GMS에 대한 얘기가 좀 나오고 있는데 이게 홈디포와 QXO가 이 GMS 인수를 하려고 하고 있죠. 그러면서 상승을 하고 있다라고 생각을 하시면 될 것 같습니다. 정리를 해봐야겠죠. 그 다음에 팔란티어랑 엑센추어에 대한 얘기를 하고 있는데 두 종목 모두 미국 정부 업무 자동화에 참여한다라는 얘기 때문에 상승을 하고 있는 모습을 보여주고 있습니다. 이렇게 정리가 됐고 일단은 뭐 내용은 다 말씀을 좀 드렸어요. 뭐 실적까지 다 체크를 좀 해드렸기 때문에 제가 언급을 해드렸던 종목들 체크를 좀 해주시면 좋을 것 같고요. 시장 얘기가 나오는 게 하나가 있는데 이 내용도 좀 말씀을 좀 해드릴게요. 와, 내용이 엄청 많이 나왔네요. 지금 팩트셋에서 2분기 실적을 비교를 해봤대요. 근데 실적이 굉장히 좀 좋게 나온 것도 많다라고 얘기를 하고 있는데 이거 위로 올려서 정리를 좀 해보도록 하겠습니다. 자, 팩트셋이 S&P 500 지수에 포함된 기업 110개의 2분기 EPS 가이던스를 발표를 했는데 51개 기업이 긍정적인 실적 전망을 내놓았다라고 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 그리고 2분기 들어서 실적이 좋아지는 게 굉장히 좀 많다라고 얘기를 하고 있고요. 근데 59개는 부정적인 컨센서스를 얘기를 하게 되면서 양극화가 굉장히 좀 커질 것이다라고 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 그 다음에 실적이 증가를 하고 있지만 뭐 증가 폭은 굉장히 좀 다르다. 이 얘기가 있는 거고요. 장이 시작이 아직 안 됐죠. 요 종목들 좀 정리를 해볼게요. 자, 홈디포의 유통 자회사인 SRS 디스트리뷰션은 이날 GMS를 주당 110달러에 인수하기로 합의했다라고 얘기를 하고 있고요. 전체 규모가 약 55억 달러에 달한다라고 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 이번 인수는 SRS가 건축 및 리모델링 시장에서 유통망을 더욱 강화하려는 전략의 일환으로서 GMS는 석고보드, 천장재, 금속 프레이밍 등 상업 및 주거용 건축자재 유통에 강점을 가진 기업이다라고 얘기를 하고 있고요. 앞서 메타에 대한 얘기를 해드렸었는데 이것도 정리를 좀 하겠습니다. 이게 엄청 큰 뉴스는 저는 아니다라고 보고는 있는데 뭐 이 뉴스 때문에 주가가 지금 올라가고 있어서 정리를 좀 하는 게 맞을 것 같다라고 생각을 하고 있는데 오픈 AI 출신 뭐 연구 인력을 영입했다라고 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 뭐 이것 때문에 주가가 상승을 하고 있는 모습이고요. 그 다음에 뭐 앞서 언급을 해드렸던 내용이 다네요. 팔란티어, 엑센추어 이 내용이 다네요. 테슬라 얘기 조금 더 추가를 해볼까요? 테슬라 다음 찾기. 미국의 감세 법안에 대한 우려가 커지고 있습니다. 미국 공화당이 도널드 트럼프 대통령의 주요 국정 의제를 이행하기 위해서 입법을 추진하는 세법 개정안이 상원 논의를 거치면서 태양광, 풍력 등 청정에너지 기업에 더 불리하게 작용을 하고 있습니다. 뭐 이번 감세 법안에는 전기차 구매 시 제공되는 세금 공제를 9월 말에 조기 종료하는 방안을 포함을 하고 있는데 이는 하원이 제시한 연말 종료안보다 더 빠른 시점이다라고 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 이게 악재였다라는 거죠. 거기에다가 뭐 캐나다 악재도 존재를 하고 있다라고 생각을 하시면 될 것 같고요. 그래서 여기까지 제가 정리를 싹 해드렸습니다. 참고해 주시면 좋을 것 같습니다.
You've been listening to us bring you stories of founders and entrepreneurs on what they're chasing after. But today it's time for us to turn the tables over to the investors. Where is the money headed? Joining us now on this very special episode is Sanjay Nath, co-founder and partner at Bloom Ventures, and Vivek Goyal, partner at Altimeter. Gentlemen, great to have you on Voices from the Valley. Thanks very much for joining us. Sanjay, this is now home for you. So from your vantage point here in the Valley, what does India look like?
Thank you, Shireen, for having us on. So it's the second homecoming, the second time I'm back here. In one sense, there's tremendous interest in India, and from the vantage point here, I see that excitement because India is both, cross-border AI and SaaS, but also the massive domestic consumer tech story. So tremendous interest, and Bloom covers both. So I'm here, but I'm kind of a spokesperson, salesperson for India.
Yeah, spokesperson and salesperson for India, and I'll get to what you're selling in just a second, but let me get Vivek into the conversation. Vivek, to start with, a quick snapshot on the AUM that Altimeter is working with at this point in time, and the big bet is of course OpenAI for you guys.
Yes, so thanks Shireen for having me. So quick background on Altimeter Capital. We are a $10 billion tech-focused crossover fund based in the Bay Area. We invest in both public and private technology companies globally. And, I've been in the Bay Area now 7 years, and I really think I've never been more excited.
Okay.
And Brad, who started the fund, he's been doing this for 25 years. And if you ask him the same question, he's never been more excited to invest in tech. This is definitely the golden age of technology. All the tech waves we've had, starting 1970s with mainframe computing, 1980s with personal computing, 1990s and 2000s with desktop internet, and I think 2010s with mobile internet and SaaS. We've had like $20 trillion of value created in technology, but I think the next wave of Gen AI in 2020s and 2030s is going to be much, much more. And you have finally a technology that can basically impact each and every sector of the industry globally, and we are very excited.
Well, the golden age for technology, that's the view there from Vivek. But, let's talk about this transformation and disruption. It opens up opportunities, but it also could potentially be an existential threat for many companies that are currently public today or even private. What do you see on your radar, on your dashboard as opportunities, and where do you see the threats today, Sanjay?
Interesting. But I fully agree with Vivek. You called it the golden age. We're also setting the golden California sun.
Yes, we are.
Thanks to that. Well, if you go back to sort of Chinese literature and language, I think the word crisis, it has both, right? It means danger, also means opportunity. So along with every wave of disruption, there's the positive energy and the light that it brings, but also crisis. It's interesting to quote Jensen Huang, who says that the jobs are not going to be taken over by AI, but by people who can leverage AI. So I think that's very true, to bring in the human element. our thesis is, again, we are about 2/3, 60% India for India, and let's say, a third or 40%, which is really built in Bangalore, Gurgaon for the world. Now, coming to your question about where the opportunities and the risks are, I think horizontal AI as well as vertical AI has the opportunity to disrupt, a lot of the incumbents. So if you look at, let's take some cases. Let's look at Waymo in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
are you Waymoing or are you still Ubering?
Well, I have to wait for my younger colleagues to come. One of my colleagues actually, he lives in Bangalore but has done 40 rides. And I said, Waymo is going to come and say bye to you at the airport. And he introduced me even though I live in the city. But what is really interesting is they are changing the user experience the same way Uber changed it when they came in. And that has the potential to disrupt so many industries. If you look at, I mean, we are also backing, we have Pixel, which is, doing space tech, my juniors from Bits Pilani. And the Indian government as well as the US Department of Defense are big customers. So they have the opportunity to disrupt not just in one or two pockets, but the world. The other, what is the reason this is happening is youth. I think younger founders don't have the baggage, and they don't have to do things. They don't see the way the world, the way we saw it. So they said, let's just start from a clean slate. So whether it's space tech or autonomous robotics, or I mean, there's a autonomous. It's a little late stage. A company called Monarch Tractors that I just saw, autonomous tractors. Now that is so interesting because who thought, right, that there would be? So I think. That the risk with this is what does it do to the traditional jobs? I think people learnability and the ability to leverage AI. I don't think you have to be a sort of master at vibe coding or know to code yourself, but you have to know how to use these tools. I think the younger folks who can leverage that, and even middle-aged and older folks who understand where this wave is coming, either you're part of the bandwagon or you're off. And I would definitely encourage everybody to be on and agree that it's a golden wave.
Let's talk about the OpenAI bet that Altimeter has made, and I'll get Sanjay to weigh in on that as well, and the impact and the implications of this for India. What is the hypothesis of what OpenAI could potentially mean in the next few years?
Yes. I think the numbers are, on a top headline basis, numbers are staggering. Media reports indicate that the latest valuation is around 250 billion to 300 billion. But if you take into context the revenue, they are at 10 billion ARR, growing over 3x. And if you look at the TAM, so Google and Meta make around 300 billion in ad revenue every year. And if you try and experience the ChatGPT product, it's much more personalized. The other day I was asking ChatGPT what kind of stroller I should buy for my daughter, and I was actually in Sao Paulo, and the app wrote that, oh, I know you're in Sao Paulo. It's a city environment, so maybe this product you should buy from this store. It's so personalized, right? And it knows all about my history. So you can make an argument that the ads on ChatGPT, because of memory, are going to be much more targeted, and it could lead to a bigger TAM. So we believe that the company can grow from 10 billion to 100 billion in the next 5 to 7 years, just by targeting and taking into Google and Meta's TAM. That's just on the consumer side.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, history has shown that consumer is mostly a winner-takes-all market. So we are pretty confident that this category is going to be huge, and OpenAI is going to win in that. The second is the B2B market. So on the enterprise side, we spoke about coding agents reaching around 2 billion in ARR. Google is saying publicly 25% of code is written by coding agents and machines. The enterprise API, GenAI API market this year is going to be 10 billion. I think Anthropic is at 3 billion ARR. And OpenAI will get its fair share. B2B is more of a winner-takes, not a winner-takes, it's an oligopolistic market. So they'll take 30 to 40% share. So you add on top of the 100 billion, they can make 30, 40 billion at least in the B2B side. And the other thing is, if you look at history, when Google went public, when Meta went public, these companies were trading at 15 times revenue. And but these have been, Google is up 50 times, Meta is up, I think, 20x since the IPO. So these have been amazing bets. So you have to have the foresight and the courage to look out 5 to 7 years.
Yes, look out 5 to 7 years, and you've certainly taken a big bite.
Yes.
So you have both courage and conviction that you're hoping will play out in the long term. But Sanjay, talking about OpenAI and what we're seeing happen as far as this AI wave is concerned, now where do you find India in that? From a consumer tech point of view, consumer-enabled tech point of view, it's a great market. It's a growing market. Eventually, you will make money. Hopefully, that's the bet. But as far as the AI wave is concerned, where do you find India today?
I think the right, to win for India has changed. A couple of examples. I mean, of course, I'm older than Vivek. So if you go back to offshoring and outsourcing as the first wave, and then you had product innovation. In the, let's say 10 years ago, in the pre-AI world, you could build software from Bangalore, Gurgaon, Pune, and Chennai, and then come here to sell it, right? Typically, where the Indian typical cross-border founder, you'd have, maybe a team of 5 here, and then, 95, let's say, in Bangalore. In this new wave, your product has to be the best. So, I mean, may happen to be an Indian origin founder, but doesn't really matter. I think customer proximity to integrate more closely into your workflow integrations with your customers, you have to be embedded and entrenched. Earlier, just the customer-facing co-founder could be here, but now your head of AI, head of product have to spend time here, because all of us are learning at the same time. Whatever they are, whether they are a CEO or a CFO or a founder or an investor, we're all learning at the same time. So there's no room for error for any learning to be lost in translation. You can't throw it over the wall or for a different time zone. You have to be here. So we're finding the other India. So India, coming back to India's right to win, I think it will still be for our companies I would say the product engine, and it has to be much more than labor arbitrage. We have great talent density. I think the administration's policy on visas are interesting because we actually were just able to hire someone who did undergrad here in computer science, worked with 2 YC-backed companies, but because of visa issues, he's now working for us in Bangalore. Now, that is a positive net effect, right? I mean, we're getting somebody from the Valley, the young lady who's moved back. So I think India's right to win has changed in the sense that the best founders who come here are moving. I was just at the YC demo day last week. Of course, it's all in on AI. I saw many Indian origin founders here, but with the 1 foot here, 1 foot there is not.
So the foot has to be, the roots has to be here. Now, if you are doing for the world, if you're doing Make in India for the world, you have to be here.
Yeah.
And the Valley is back.
Well, you could say the Valley never left, and the Valley's back, but I think it's more real now, like Vivek is saying. And he's got some great data folded up in his hands about charts. Because you're kind of trying to predict the future and saying that, Vivek, you were talking about the incumbents and your disruptors. And remember, every incumbent was once a disruptor.
Exactly.
So we're seeing many of them are thinking, how do we partner? You're seeing incumbents strategically invest in some of these disruptors. So I think working closely with the ecosystem, and you're going to see many more, I think, handshakes, to use that word.
M&A a big feature as far as 2025 and beyond is concerned? Do you believe that, as Sanjay is pointing out, we're likely to see a lot more of that happen because the Davids and Goliath story is going to play out as we've seen in the past?
I think spot on. I think it's an amazing, again, time to be a venture investor in the Valley and globally, because you are at the beginning of a massive S-curve with Gen AI. And the incumbents, I think unlike the e-commerce wave where the incumbents were retail companies, they were not ahead of the curve. But I think here incumbents want to be aggressive, but I think they're still tied down by their existing sales motion, existing product teams. So they will do a lot of M&A. And what we've seen is that the new administration is much more in the US. It's much more open to M&A. So we saw last week Meta bought Scale AI for 15 to billion. We've seen Snowflake acquire a couple of companies, Databricks acquire a couple of companies, ServiceNow acquired like a couple of companies as well. So I think it's going to happen a lot. And it's like 1999, 2000, maybe like 168 companies went public in that time. So maybe not a lot of like pump companies going public, but we'll definitely see
a lot of M&A. But even the going public side of the story, because that's seen a lull in the US, it hasn't seen a lull in India. In India, in fact, we've had perhaps our best year in 2024, but from a new age company listing point of view. But do you see a revival of the IPO market on the anvil?
Yeah. So I think the way we think about this is, IPO markets are always open. Are the entrepreneurs and companies ready to take a fair value that's conducive to us public market investors? And we've seen now Circle, the stablecoin issuer, went public, and the stock is up 7x in a matter of 3 weeks. We've seen Chime, the consumer fintech app, go public. We see in the pipeline Figma, Netscope. We will see a lot of M&A this year. And I think the approach we have as public and private investors, that public markets are always open, and we would love to partner with companies who want to go public at a fair valuation.
The IPO story in India continues to look robust. I mean, we've got a whole bunch lined up at this point in time, from Urban Company, Meesho, and of course a lot of the fintech big boys, PhonePe, and so on and so forth.
I think continuous and has become. I mean, I'm going back to 2010, 11 when Karthik and I started Bloom, and we were right here talking to Valley VCs. And I remember one of them said, well, how many companies have gone public? You could name it on your hand. You had Make My Trip, Just Dial. And it's very interesting. I think Bloom is playing on both these pockets. I think there's a tremendous demand from not just institutional but retail investors for tech. The advantage is that you can have a lower scale but be profitable and go public. So in terms of our portfolio entry and exit construction, that's positive. And on this side, we are looking to partner with large entities, the growth investors like Altimeter, because that's where the AI companies need help, right? They need to build a global footprint, a Valley footprint, get entrenched here. So it's really these two pockets that we are playing in both. And the IPO story is really interesting. I mean, we have a IPO chart with all our companies, our logos, including Purple and everyone else. And say this year are the milestones. This is when they're likely to go public, and we have sort of IPO readiness sessions that Karthik, Ashish, and our head of capital markets do, which was not the case 10 years ago. They either had to be IPOs here or maybe M&As, which are not really not paying for full value. So that's a huge change.
That's a huge change and a huge shift. But you're excited about India and the India story, given the growth of the economy, but also the growth of the consumer tech space in India. But you're not putting your money into India yet. Why is that?
I think very honestly, it's very rare you see a geography which has trillions in GDP and also growing per capita GDP at like 6-7%. So I think it's the best place to invest from a consumer standpoint. And I think it's very likely that Zomato will eventually be a $100 billion company. You see in every country, the local e-commerce player in Korea, in Coupang in Korea, Mercado Libre in Latin America, Amazon in US, we have Shopee in Southeast Asia, and like Alibaba, JD in China. So you'll see, I think Zomato will should eventually likely be that. I think Meesho and Urban, I think I love those companies and entrepreneurs as well. I think the regulatory system in India is such that it's very difficult for foreign investors both from a tax, compliance, it's a lot of burden to be able to invest in publicly listed companies in India. And we're trying to work closely to figure out solutions, but it's been pretty hard. But I would love to invest in all of these companies.
You would love to invest, but not at the moment. That's, you know, and you're out there perhaps raising money for a fund?
Yeah.
And what's the response been so far? What's the feedback that you're getting?
No, absolutely. So we are now raising our 5th fund. You know, I think the sweet spot has always been about 250 to 300 million. We like that spot because I think the outcomes support it. I think, you know, more capital is also always useful, but you always want to measure your outcomes. So I think the response is that it's a tough fundraising market in general. I mean, you know, for the world. But what is interesting is there's a lot of belief in the India story. I'll give an example, Stage.
Yeah.
Stage, which is so interesting. I mean, Neeraj Chopra is a brand ambassador. He's very, very passionate while he practices. He's a proud Indian. He practices, his base is outside India, but he's, you know, proud Haryanvi. They have paying customers, and they just complete this round with Goodwater Capital, right from here in the valley, that invested in it. And imagine the potential, because you land one state and you can go across India. So you have local consumer tech stories with investor interest, and of course that is also helping us because people want to see those stories as well. I think one of the concerns in India has been just the return of, the lack of the return of liquidity and DPI. But, you know, we just had some good news. Secondaries have taken off, and, you know, again, as we have an IPO chart, we also have a DPI chart, because LPs are asking for that and saying, okay, this is great. You have all these great markups. And I think the Indian IPO market is a huge, really attractive avenue that's enabling a lot of this, along with a lot of secondary investors will come in. So I think what India is doing now we need to show this recycling of cash, which is very active in the valley.
Which has started to happen. It started to happen as well. But you know, we were talking about all the charts that you're looking at, Vivek. So throw some numbers at us in terms of what the big bets are going to be. Of course, linked to generative AI and perhaps outside of that as well.
I think the big debate in the market right now is that there is around $500 billion of capex going into Gen AI, right? And if you, every year, by the way, right? So if you add it up over 4 years, it's like $2 trillion of capex is going into this big bet. Is there going to be an ROI? And that's the biggest
question,
debate.
Yes.
And I think if you take a long enough horizon, 5 to 10 years, we definitely believe that there is a very strong ROI. And, you know, we are starting to see the shoots, the early signs of those ROIs. And, you know, we can walk through certain examples. Just like, you know, the way we browse the web. We used to have Google, a $2 trillion company, that was the gateway to the web. And I think that's definitely going to change. I'm not saying Google goes away, but Google search, the way it exists, is going to change. So it most likely, our bet is, you know, ChatGPT is going to take over. Could be a huge company. That's an amazing ROI. Second big area where we've seen immediate ROI is customer care. You know, $500 billion industry. People are using, even by the way, Meesho in India, I've heard, they are using Gen AI. And they've been able to reduce cost and actually improve the CSAT. Because it turns out that the AI is more empathetic than a human being. And I heard that, you know, that was a mind-blowing stat to me. So that's $500 billion annual revenue industry, and that could be disrupted. Same, you know, is like the Indian IT outsourcing industry. That will, the nature and the margins of that industry will change. You know, then we go into the coding industry. You have 30 to 50 million developers globally. And, you know, the way to think about Gen AI attacking this is that this is going to attack basically the salaries of these developers. So that's like a multi-trillion-dollar sort of an asset class. And you have companies like Microsoft yesterday, unfortunately, laying off a lot of people. Amazon publicly saying we need to keep our headcount flat to down. This is the golden age of, you know, margin expansion. So another stat is 2011 to 2021, big tech hired, the annual increase in employees at big tech was 25%. Starting 21 to 25, it's been flat. So the entire Silicon Valley had 25% employee growth. Now it's flat because people are, like Google said publicly, 25% of code is being written by Gen AI, right? So the cost saving potential runs into trillions. And then, you have education. I can now have a personalized AI tutor teaching me language. And there's a company called Duolingo, $20 billion company based in Pittsburgh. They are doing that. So I think you go line by line. Maybe in the near term, people are overshooting in terms of expectations, but I think in the long term, people are definitely underestimating.
So let me end by asking you forecasts for the year, whatever is left of it, and for 2026 as well. And I'll ask Vivek that also.
Well, I should have got a sneak preview at his cheat sheet. I think, again, the two Indias, I think the IPO story in India will continue to be stronger. They're all becoming role models, and we have, for example, Manish at Purple and Rahul Dipinder in Zomato as a role model. So I think that continues to be very positive. Also building on the coattails of all the stats that Vivek shared. I think here it's certainly the golden wave again, and we're very excited. We were at YC Demo Day, loved what came out of it. We're also learning, that's new. And I think the older, the earlier wave was, the 1 million to 10 million to 25 million scale up was great. Today we're seeing scale ups to 100 million in 3 years. So we have to make sure our founders are part of that we are part of that. So very, very bullish on both the Gen AI, vertical AI story here, as well as consumer tech in India.
Okay, your time starts now.
Thanks.
Throw those charts at us.
I think so 2025 and 26 are going to be the years of agents. And, let me give you an example that, I'm trying to book a flight for my parents to visit us. And you try and book the cheapest flight. So you try and keep checking every day that, this is my flight. I want to get the cheapest price. But now you can have an agent keep browsing the web for me at the back end and just give me a ping. Hey, this is the cheapest flight. I know they don't have like the EU visa. This is the best time. Just they have my payment information. I just click a button and I say, yes, just do it. So I think the technology exists. I think the tooling is being built, and all of us will be surprised, I can promise you, by what AI can do than not. So I think I'm pretty bullish on agents this year.
So agents will be the big theme, and that clearly.
Mrs. Fisher. Aye. Mrs. Hyde-Smith, aye. Mr. Kelly, no. Mrs. Shaheen, no. Mr. Moran, aye. Mr. Hoven, aye. Ms. Murkowski, aye. Mr. Young, aye. Mr. Coons, no.
혼자 하기 너무 벅찼었는데 쿠몽으로 많이 부담을 줄였어요. 쇼핑몰 오픈은 했는데 운영하기 정말 어렵더라고요. 상품 고르고 매출 관리하고 마케팅은 처음 하는 거니까 어떻게 해야 되는지 모르잖아요. 제품 촬영이나 마케팅, SNS 관리까지 쿠몽에 맡기면 사업이 훨씬 편해져요. 쇼핑몰 사업은 쿠몽과 함께 하세요. 너무 비죠.
हाइप मार।
Yes.
अच्छा, ऐसे ही पढ़ा था राहुल जी, आप हो गए थर्ड जनरेशन जो इस धंधे में। थर्ड जनरेशन के लिए बड़ा चैलेंजिंग होता है क्योंकि एक तरफ लीगेसी है, दूसरी तरफ अपने आप को ट्रांसफॉर्म करने की जरूरत, जैसे आप धीरे धीरे कह रहे हैं प्रोडक्ट पोर्टफोलियो एनहांस कर रहे हैं, कैसे दोनों के बीच में तालमेल बिठाते हो आप?
Good morning. You're with us here on a fresh new edition of Bazaar Morning Call. Thursday morning, we are coming to you live as always.
Just bid it, buy it. One person's chaos is another person's animal spirits.
Breaking market headlines and corporate news from across the globe.
The semiconductor business is a really cyclical business. These are two big-time blue-chip companies. Are people just too exuberant out there?
Bloomberg Intelligence with Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Monday morning from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York City. To our worldwide audience, we are streaming live on YouTube as well. So head over to youtube.com, search Bloomberg Live Podcast. That's where you'll find us. Norma Linda and Paul Sweeney with you this morning. Coming up, we're going to check in with Bloomberg News Washington editor Mike Dornan, get his thoughts on the latest with this tax bill winding its way through Congress here. Votorama, is that a thing? I think that's what's going on down there. So we're going to be talking about this thing all day. Max Wasserman, co-founder and senior portfolio manager at Miramar Capital, will join us. Give us his thoughts on these markets. Anurag Rana, Bloomberg Intelligence tech analyst, Oracle cloud business. It's getting real for them, so we'll see what he has to say there. Jody Lurie, Bloomberg Intelligence. She's a credit analyst over there. She follows all the fun companies, cruise lines, the casinos, the hotels, and get a sense of how the travel and leisure industry is looking here as we head into this summer. And Sam Fazeli, Bloomberg Intelligence, we're going to talk all things healthcare with him. But let's go to Lisa Mateo right now.
And this Bloomberg Business Flash is brought to you by IBKR. Will the U.S. Consumer Sentiment Index exceed 56 in July 2025? At IBKR Forecast Trader, the yes recently at 24%. Start predicting today. IBKR.com/forecast. The last trading day for this contract is July 31st. Well, optimism over U.S. trade talks, hopes for Federal Reserve rate cuts, those are pushing stocks to all-time highs, with the S&P 500 on pace for its best quarter since December of 2023. Let's start there. The S&P 500 up 0.2%, 12 points. We are in record territory, so let's get to those levels. 6,185. The Dow up 0.3% at 43,968, and the Nasdaq up 0.2%, 20,317. The two-year yield, 3.73%. That's down 1 basis point. The yield on the 10-year, 4.26%. That's down 1 basis point. To currencies, the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index, that's down about 0.1%. The Senate begins voting on amendments to President Trump's tax and spending bill today. And one person who's not a big fan of it is Elon Musk. He's not happy about the cuts to electric vehicle, clean energy credits. So we'll check in with Tesla shares. They're down about 0.6%. Then you look at shares of companies like Enphase Energy. They're down 4%. And Next Era Energy, they're dropping more than 4% as well. Two stocks on the move, Juniper Networks and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. The reason why? Well, the Justice Department, they settled its lawsuit challenging Hewlett-Packard Enterprise's $13 billion takeover of Juniper. So we look at Juniper, their shares up 8%, and HPE up about 13%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Lisa Mateo. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Nora and Paul.
Lisa Mateo, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Stocks moving higher, as Lisa just reported. Let's take a look at some of the stocks on the move today. I'm Paul Sweeney, along with Norma Linda, joined by Bloomberg's Isabel Lee. Isabel, what are you looking at?
I'm looking at Circle. You see shares higher by 2%. So this comes after a slew of banks and companies initiated coverage for the stock. And of course, Circle really had a sizzling IPO earlier this month. So most notable is JP Morgan, which said that rated Circle as underweight. It said that valuations are pushed beyond the broker's comfort zone, and the price target it gave is $80. Circle is now at $180. The average is around 196. It has 6 buys, 6 holds, 2 sells. The highest it need at $250. So JP Morgan said that, even if Circle is well positioned in the stablecoin market, enjoys early mover advantage, its market cap is really elevated. Right now, it's at $40 billion, and it really rose 500% since its debut 3 weeks ago.
What an
that's
insane
amazing.
performance.
That was unbelievable.
It really was.
Story. So yeah, I mean, and it's not. Well, I'm gonna say it's rare that you accelerating.
That's a good point. JP Morgan was the lead bank to really
Right.
do that
That's
IPO.
interesting. What's going on at Disney?
Disney's stock is DIS. Shares are up around just almost 1%. So Jefferies upgraded the stock to buy. The broker said it's now seeing limited risk for any slowdown in the key parks division in the second half of the year. Anyone who's been to the park knows it's nice, but kind of expensive. I got a one-day pass. It was around $300.
My goodness.
Exactly. Jefferies also said there's more upside to the cruise division in 2026 and just really continued margin expansion for direct-to-consumer offerings. So we also have them saying that content and sports sales in the next 6 months will be favorable. So overall, we have Jefferies saying that they have increased confidence in the growth trajectory and expect an earnings breakout. So
the
stock
big
is
thing
up.
for Disney is that the streaming business, went from losing money for about 4 years to now actually making money, and that delta is really huge.
Yes.
So you're going to see a ramp up. The question for a lot of investors is can their streaming business get to the same profitability as Netflix? And I don't think most analysts are forecasting that, but still, now that they're actually generating positive operating, huge swing.
I mean, they have blockbuster releases like Zootopia 2 and Avatar 3. I haven't watched any of them, but they've really gotten rave reviews, I heard.
So anyway, all right. Stocks at a 52-week high today, up about 11%. All right, one more.
Moderna, mRNA, this is our biggest gainer, at least among all the three I'm talking about today. It's up by more than 2%. So the company said its experimental flu shot met the goal in the late stage trial. So this really sets the stage for Moderna to offer a 2-in-1 shot for COVID and flu. So the result is a bright spot because they've really been struggling. I mean, a lot of people take flu shots. We have this every year in Bloomberg and many companies in any CVS you walk to. But COVID shots have been declining because people now believe that COVID is really just like a cough or so shares are up. Moderna believes that packaging the 2-in-1 will lead to a higher uptake of their COVID vaccines. Nearly half of Americans get annual flu shot, but only 20% get COVID. So again, this is really, they're banking on this, and the company plans to seek approval for both standalone. But for now, they also want the 2-in-1.
Interesting. Shares still struggling this year, down about 33% so far year to date. So
maybe this will be the bright spot.
We're going to talk to Sam Fazeli, Bloomberg Intelligence, covers all things on the healthcare pharma space. So ask him about what's happening. I get the flu shot every year.
Same.
That's good.
Just because Bloomberg offers it
here,
so
makes it convenient,
easy, and I don't know. We'll see.
But for the COVID, I guess, yeah.
All right,
it's
if they
an
can put 2-in-1,
afterthought.
sure, why not?
Yeah.
But I know a lot of folks, as you said, half the country doesn't get the flu shot. So we'll see how that plays out. All right, Isabel Lee, thank you so much. We appreciate that. For more conversations like this, subscribe to our new Stock Movers Reports. Listen for 5-minute audio reports on the biggest winners and losers in the stock market. Subscribe to Stock Movers on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen. Let's check in with Max Wasserman, co-founder and senior portfolio manager. Mike Dorning, Mike Dorning, let's go there first. Let's do that because we want to get the latest on what's happening in Washington, D.C. with this big, beautiful bill that's winding its way through Congress. Mike Dorning, Bloomberg News, Washington editor. Mike, it's going to be a busy day for our friends in the U.S. Senate today. What's the schedule today?
So today they're basically going on a long day of voting on amendments to this tax bill, which will mostly be Democrats sort of offering amendments to highlight problems in the tax bill and getting all the Republicans on record supporting the most contentious parts of the tax bill. But there is also a possibility there could be some modifications in the bill because some of the Republican moderates are concerned that they're cutting too deeply into Medicaid and other safety net programs. Some of the fiscal conservatives are concerned they're not cutting deeply enough.
So where do Democrats fit into all this?
They're in the minority. They just complain and criticize. They don't have enough votes to really do anything to stop it.
We had Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Bloomberg Television and Radio earlier this morning with Shonali Bassick. And when asked about the Medicare thing, he says those people need to get back to work. A lot of them aren't working and things like that. From a political perspective, how do both parties position that Medicaid issue where apparently many people will lose access?
So I mean, I think the Democrats are going to focus on other elements of the Medicaid cuts, like, for instance, some of the cuts to what they call Medicaid expansion, that is, people who got Medicaid through Obamacare. There's also changes that they're making in the amount of money that goes to states. So there are things that are kind of crimping Medicaid in various ways, or they'll probably argue that a lot of these are documentation problems. But the end result is the estimate from the Congressional Budget Office is about 11 or 12 million people will lose health care coverage from the Medicaid cuts. A lot of the rural moderates want to just add in a fund to help rural hospitals because the loss of Medicaid coverage might force some rural hospitals to close.
So I know Democrats, they're offering amendments to the package, but as you mentioned, they are the minority here. In Washington, I mean, what's going on here? Are they actually being heard at all, or is it just pretty much a lot of noise in the background here?
The Democrats in Washington, because they are the minority, are mostly noise in the background. But there are real fights going on underneath the surface, even among Republicans. Basically all the Republicans support the core idea of the bill, the tax cuts, the increase in spending for defense and immigration enforcement. But the side issues, some of the elements like how deeply do you want the country to go into debt for this? How much do you want to cover safety net services like Medicaid? How quickly do you want to get rid of clean energy tax cuts? Do you want to add coal as a clean energy? Things like that. Those are the fights on the edges that are still ongoing today. And for people in New York, the fight over like how big the SALT deduction is more or less resolved, but not quite.
Mike, July 4th is a deadline that's been laid out there to get this thing passed. What's the likelihood?
The likelihood is reasonable, but not for sure. The question is, does the House go along with what the Senate did? Because basically the Senate is going to aim to finish voting by Tuesday, and then the House would come back Wednesday and vote again on it. If the House just says, what you did in the Senate's great, we're not going to make any changes, then it could get done by July 4th. But if there are people in the House who say, no, that's not good enough, it's hard to see it getting done by July 4th.
30 seconds, Mike. Are we seeing President Trump man the phones here in a couple of days?
We're seeing him man the phones, go golfing, whatnot. He is giving this the full court press. This is the main thing he wants out of Congress this year. It's really the only thing almost that he wants out of Congress.
All right, Mike, thank you so much for your reporting. We always appreciate it. Mike Dorning, he's a Washington editor for Bloomberg News. He's joining us from Washington, D.C. again. Kind of a deadline out there for Friday, July 4th to get this thing done. Before then, we'll see if the Senate can get that done. Looking at the market's feeling pretty positive about things. The S&P's up about 15 points. That's 0.25%. The Nasdaq's up 48 points. That's 0.25% as well. The Tom Keene VIX, it's up about 17 right here. This is Bloomberg.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This Bloomberg Business Flash brought to you by Oracle. Attention growing businesses. Oracle is offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. For new U.S. customers with minimum financial commitment, see if your company qualifies at oracle.com/Bloomberg. Trade progress lifting sentiment on Wall Street. Canada withdraws its digital services tax on tech companies. We're going to restart trade talks with the U.S. We have the S&P 500 up 0.1%. 10 points. The Dow up 0.2%, 111 points, and the Nasdaq up about 0.1% or 30 points. The 2-year yield 3.74%. That's little changed, and the yield on the 10-year 4.27%. That's little changed. Commodities, we have Brent crude up down 0.1%, $67 a barrel. Spot gold right now up 0.2%, $3,282 an ounce. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index, that's off about 0.1%. And finally, Bitcoin, that's little change, just above 107,000. I want to take a look at bank shares this morning. For example, Goldman Sachs, their shares up more than 2%. The bank passed the Federal Reserve's annual stress tests along with other major U.S. banks, and that's clearing the way for increased shareholder payouts. So we go to Bank of America, up about nearly 1%.